They laughed when he refused the Belle of the West, until they saw who he married instead. The wind on Westreach Prime always carried grit. It came from the copper flats beyond the town wall, slipped through cracked stone, and settled into clothes, food, and even the corners of a person's thoughts. People here learned to speak with their teeth slightly clenched, as if the dust might steal their words. Yet tonight the streets were clean, the lamps were bright, and the whole colony pretended it was a place of polished metal and soft music. The Plaza of Union sat at the center of town like a stubborn promise. Old ships, hull plates had been hammered into a wide platform. Banners hung from cables overhead, stitched from sailcloth and painted with suns and wheat and the crest of the Vale family. Someone had even brought imported flowers in sealed boxes, and now they sat in tall glass tubes so they would not die too fast in the thin air. Everyone came, everyone had to. Westreach Prime did not have many big moments. A wedding between Seraphine Vale and Captain Elias Ward was not only a wedding, it was an announcement, it was a treaty. It was the kind of event that made the colony feel important in a universe that mostly did not notice it existed. Seraphine arrived first, and the crowd leaned forward like one body. She wore a dress of pale silver fabric that shimmered under the lamp glow, and her hair was braided and pinned with small stones that glittered as she moved. She was smiling, a careful smile practiced in mirrors and meetings. She knew how to look warm and distant at the same time, like sunlight behind glass. Around her, the Vales moved like people who owned the ground. Her father, Governor Vale, wore a dark coat with a high collar and a pin that marked him as the colony's elected leader. The pin shone more than it should have because it was new and because he wanted it to shine. He spoke to guests with a slow, sure voice. He placed hands on shoulders like he was blessing them. If he had been born on old Earth, Elias once thought, he would have become a senator. Here on the edge of known space, he became a governor and a gatekeeper. There were other important people too, merchants with thick rings, farm barons with dust under their nails but credit in their accounts, security chiefs with clean boots. Even two off-world trade representatives stood near the front, watching everything through thin, dark lenses. They were not human, but they wore human-style coats to look polite. Their species, the Marn, did not smile the way humans did. Their faces stayed still, and that made some colonists uneasy. Elias Ward was supposed to arrive at the peak moment. The crowd expected it like a firework. They wanted to see the hero walk onto the platform and take Seraphine's hand. They wanted to clap and cheer and feel safe, because a man like Elias meant ships would come, supplies would arrive, and raiders would think twice. He had earned that reputation the hard way. Elias had not been born rich. He came from the inner roots, from a station where children learned to sleep with engine noise in their bones. He joined the fleet young, and he survived the kind of battles that left empty suits drifting in silent fields. He never talked about those days unless someone asked him directly, and even then he used plain words. He did not tell stories to impress people. He had no need. When he finally entered the plaza, the murmur grew into cheers. Elias walked at a steady pace, shoulders straight, hair trimmed short in fleet style. He wore a formal uniform, but it looked like an old friend rather than a costume. There were small marks on the fabric where it had been repaired. His boots were polished, but not perfectly. He did not shine for the crowd, he simply showed up. Seraphine turned toward him and her smile widened. It looked natural, and it probably was, at least partly. Elias was not a bad match on paper. He had a name, he had respect. He had a ship, and on the frontier, a ship was a kind of crown. Governor Vale raised his hands for silence. The plaza quieted. Even the children stopped whispering. A thin hum from the power lamps filled the space between breaths. "Friends of Westreach Prime," the governor began, "we gather not only to celebrate love, but to celebrate unity. In hard times, we survive together. In uncertain times, we stand together. Tonight, we join two strong houses." Elias listened without changing his face. He had heard versions of this speech before. He knew what the governor was really saying. This is a deal. This is a chain made of gold. The officiant stepped forward next, an older woman with a calm voice and a worn book of colony law. She spoke of partnership, of duty, of shared future. Seraphine watched Elias closely, her eyes bright. Around them, the crowd leaned in again, hungry for the moment when Elias would speak. The officiant asked Seraphine first. She answered without hesitation. "I do," Seraphine said, clear and steady. Her voice carried across the plaza. There was a soft sigh from the audience as if the world had clicked into place. Then the officiant turned to Elias. "Captain Elias Ward," she said, "do you accept Seraphine Vale as your lawful partner to share in burden and blessing, in scarcity and abundance, as recognized under the charter of Westreach Prime?" For half a second, everything held still. Elias looked at Seraphine. He saw her hope, he saw her confidence. He also saw the sharp line beneath it, the part of her that counted every outcome. Then he looked past her at Governor Vale. The governor's gaze was fixed, expectant, almost satisfied. He believed the answer was already decided. In his mind, Elias belonged to the colony now. A hero could be admired, but a hero could also be owned. Elias breathed in. The air tasted like dust and metal and flowers trying to stay alive. He spoke into the quiet. "No," he said. The word was simple. It did not need extra weight, yet it landed like a dropped tool on a metal floor, loud, shocking, impossible to ignore. For a heartbeat, nobody reacted. The crowd's faces did not change because their brains did not understand what they had heard. Even Seraphine did not move, as if she thought she had misheard him. The officiant blinked. "Captain," she began. Elias raised one hand, not rude, just firm. "I refuse," he said, still calm. "I won't bind myself to this." Whispers broke out, first as small sounds, then like a wave. People looked at each other, wide-eyed. Some laughed, short and unsure, like laughter could turn the moment into a joke and make it safe. Seraphine finally moved. The smile fell away from her face, and in its place was something sharper. "Elias," she said softly, so only he and the nearest row might hear, "this is not funny." "It's not a joke," he answered. Governor Vale stepped forward, a controlled anger behind his pleasant mask. "Captain Ward," he said, voice still smooth for the crowd, "perhaps you are overwhelmed. This is a public ceremony. If you have concerns, we can discuss them privately." Elias met the governor's eyes. He did not flinch. "There's nothing to discuss." A hard silence spread again, but now it was not confusion. It was fear and anger and embarrassment. A public refusal was not only personal, it was a crack in the colony's story about itself. Seraphine's chin lifted. "You gave your word," she said, louder now. "You agreed." "I agreed to consider it," Elias replied. "I did consider it." "And you decide this now?" Seraphine's voice trembled, but not with tears. It trembled with pride struck in front of witnesses. "In front of everyone?" "Yes," Elias said, "because this wasn't meant to be private. It was meant to be a message." That made the whispers turn sharp. People heard the word message and thought of politics, threats, debts. The Marne trade representatives tilted their heads slightly, a sign of interest in their culture. One of them spoke quietly to the other, their words a low clicking sound. Governor Vale's smile tightened. "What message would that be?" he asked. Elias let his gaze sweep the crowd. He saw people he had protected. He saw people he had argued with. He saw young workers who looked at him as if he had just betrayed them. He saw older settlers who looked angry because they had built their lives on fragile deals and did not want those deals disturbed. "This colony needs to stop thinking small," Elias said. "You think survival means tying yourselves together into a knot so tight you can't move. You think power is family names and old grudges. You think a ship captain should be bought with a ceremony." He paused. He kept his voice even, but it carried. "I won't be bought," he said. Some people booed, others gasped. A few laughed again, louder this time, as if mocking him would restore the order of things. Someone shouted, "Then leave!" And that shout found friends. Seraphine's eyes narrowed. "So what?" she said. "You'll walk away from this, from us." "From everything we built?" Elias looked at her. "I didn't build this," he said. "I helped keep it from falling apart. That's different." The officiant stood frozen, unsure what role was left for her. The musicians at the edge of the plaza stopped playing, instruments lowered, faces pale. Governor Vale's voice dropped and the warmth was gone. "You are making an enemy of the people who supported you," he said, "and you are shaming my daughter." "I didn't come here to shame anyone," Elias answered. "I came to be honest." He reached into the inside pocket of his uniform and pulled out a small data slate. The crowd watched, tense, as if he might reveal a weapon. He tapped the slate and sent a file to the colony broadcast system. Screens around the plaza flickered, showing a simple notice. "Captain Elias Ward resigns his post as Trade Commander of Westreach Prime, effective immediately." A roar of voices rose. "Resign? Leave." People surged forward until the security chief shouted and pushed them back. The sound was messy, full of panic. Seraphine stared at the screens, then back at Elias. You planned this, she said, and now there was hurt in her voice, real and raw. I did, Elias admitted. You used me, she snapped. Elias shook his head. I didn't use you, I refused you, that's not the same thing. That line made a few people hiss. It sounded cold. Elias knew it sounded cold, but he also knew how lies sounded, and he refused to speak them. Governor Vale stepped closer, and for a moment Elias could see the governor's true self, someone who could be kind when it helped and cruel when it was needed. Where do you think you're going? The governor asked. Elias turned slightly, angling his body as if he was already moving away. Beyond this world, he said. A laugh burst from a merchant near the front. Beyond, he scoffed. You think you'll find better than this? Out there is nothing but empty rocks and pirates. Others joined the laughter, glad for the excuse. He's lost it, someone said. Hero thinks he's too good for us. A young dock worker shouted, You'll crawl back when you're hungry? Elias did not argue. He knew the frontier had trained them to believe the horizon was a wall. If they believed that, then they would never look up and see the larger sky. Seraphine took one step toward him, her voice low, almost pleading now. Elias, don't do this. If you walk away, you'll be alone. You'll have no base, no support. You're throwing away safety. Elias held her gaze for a long moment. He saw the part of her that wanted control, and the part that wanted certainty, and the part that maybe truly wanted him. But wanting someone was not the same as understanding them. I'm not choosing loneliness, he said quietly. I'm choosing truth. Then he turned away. The crowd reacted like a storm. Security tried to form a path, but people pressed in. Elias moved through them without pushing, without rushing, as if he had all the time in the universe. In a way, he did. He walked down the plaza steps and into the main street. The lamps there were dimmer. The music did not follow. Behind him, the ceremony had become a shouting match, a public wound. His first officer, Mara Klein, waited at the edge of the crowd near a service alley. She wore a plain jacket and carried a small bag. She did not look surprised. When Elias reached her, she fell into step beside him. Your timing is terrible, she said under her breath. It's perfect, Elias replied. Mara glanced back at the plaza, where Governor Vale's voice was now sharp over the public speakers, trying to regain control. They'll be furious. They already were, Elias said. They just hit it better. They moved faster now, slipping between buildings. The alley smelled like grease and old rainwater. A transport cart rattled past, and the driver pretended not to recognize Elias. Fear was contagious on the frontier. So was loyalty, but fear often won first. At the edge of town, the spaceport lights glowed against the dark sky. Elias' ship sat on a launch pad like a quiet animal, black hull catching only thin strips of light. It was not the biggest ship on Westreach Prime, but it was the fastest. Its name was painted near the nose in simple letters, Wayfarer. A small group of crew members waited near the ramp. They did not speak much. They had made their choice earlier. Each one carried a bag. Each one had the look of someone stepping into unknown space. Mara exhaled. So it's really happening, she said. Elias stopped at the base of the ramp and looked up at the stars. Westreach Prime's sky was clearer than Earth's old skies had been, and the stars looked sharp enough to cut. Somewhere out there were roots the colony had never seen. Somewhere out there were truths bigger than local politics. It's happening, he said. Behind them, distant sirens began to wail. Governor Vale's security forces were moving, not fast enough yet, but moving. One crew member, a young engineer named Jace, swallowed hard. Captain, he asked, are we going to be hunted? Elias looked at him. Maybe, he said. He did not soften it. But we won't be owned. Jace nodded, fear and pride mixing on his face. He turned and hurried up the ramp. Elias stepped onto the ship and felt the familiar hum under his feet. The Wayfarer smelled like oil, warm circuits, and home. He walked to the cockpit without looking back. Mara followed, sealing the hatch behind them. Outside, on the far edge of the port, a line of security vehicles appeared, lights flashing. Tiny figures pointed toward the ship. The distance made their anger look small, like insects tapping on glass. Mara slid into her seat and powered up the systems. Clearance won't come, she said. We don't need it, Elias answered. She hesitated, then gave him a sideways look. You sure about what comes next? Elias' hands rested lightly on the controls. He thought of Seraphine's face when he said no. He thought of Governor Vale's eyes. He thought of the laughter. Yes, he said. The engines rose in a steady growl. Dust lifted in spirals around the landing pad. The security vehicles stopped short, as if unsure whether they could really stop a ship that was already leaving. Elias stared at the sky until the cockpit glass reflected stars. He did not feel triumph. He felt calm, like a man who had finally stepped out of a cage he did not realize he was in. As the Wayfarer lifted, the town shrank beneath them. The plaza lights became a small patch of brightness. The banners, the flowers, the speeches, everything that had felt so big a moment ago became tiny and far away. Mara checked the navigation. "We're leaving orbit in 2 minutes," she said. Elias nodded, eyes forward. Beyond the colony's familiar routes was a stretch of space that maps labeled with warnings and blank lines. Most people avoided blank lines. Humans, he had learned, sometimes chased them. The ship climbed, and the planet's curve appeared, wide and cold. Westreach Prime looked peaceful from above, as if it had never known hunger or fear or pride. Elias knew better. He set the course. The Wayfarer turned toward the dark. The Wayfarer cut through the dark like a quiet thought, its engines leaving only a thin blue trail behind. Space stretched wide and empty around it, stars scattered like broken glass across a black floor. Inside the ship, the hum of systems was steady and soft, a sound the crew trusted more than silence. Elias stood behind the pilot's chair, hands resting on the backrest, watching the stars slide past the main screen. He did not feel chased yet. He knew the colony's ships were slower, and their pilots were trained to guard, not to hunt. Still, he kept one eye on the sensors, waiting for a sign that anger had grown into action. Mara tapped at her console. "No pursuit," she said after a moment. "They're talking, not moving." Elias nodded. "They will move later," he said. "Once they decide what story they want to tell about us." Jace, the young engineer, floated halfway out of the maintenance bay, holding a tool he had forgotten to put down. "What kind of story is that?" he asked. Elias looked at him. "The kind where we're the villains," he said. "Or the fools, depends on who's listening," Jace frowned. "I don't feel like a villain." "Neither do most villains," Mara said lightly, though her eyes stayed on the sensors. The Wayfarer passed the last marker buoy of Westreach Prime's controlled space. Beyond it, the nav map changed color, shifting from clean lines and clear paths to wide gray zones marked with old warnings. Unknown routes, unstable signals, possible hazards. It was the kind of space that made traders turn around and explorers slow down. Elias leaned forward and entered a new code into the system. The ship's map updated again, revealing a hidden route, a thin, glowing line that curved away from all known lanes. Jace's eyes widened. "That wasn't on the charts," he said. "It's not supposed to be," Elias replied. Mara glanced back. "You going to tell us where we're really headed?" Elias met her eyes. "To a place most people think is a rumor," he said. "A station inside a dead star's gravity shadow," Jace stared. "That's impossible." "Most things are," Elias said, "until someone builds them." The Wayfarer adjusted course, following the hidden path. The stars around them began to shift in strange ways, light bending slightly, like the universe was looking through a warped lens. The crew grew quiet as the darkness deepened. Even the hum of the ship seemed to lower, as if it did not want to be heard. After several hours, the first sign appeared. The stars ahead dimmed, not because something blocked them, but because something bent their light away. The screen filled with a slow-moving, swirling shadow like a hole in space itself. Jace swallowed. "That's not a star," he said. "It used to be," Elias replied. "Long time ago," Myra slowed the ship. "I don't like this," she said. "My instruments do like it either." "Trust the line," Elias said. They moved forward, careful and steady. The shadow grew, filling the screen until it felt like they were flying into the mouth of the universe. Then, suddenly, lights appeared. At first, Jace thought they were stars. Then he realized they were too close, too ordered. Lines of white and gold light formed shapes in the darkness, massive and precise. The station emerged like a city built on nothing. Huge rings circled a dark core. Towers and platforms stretched out like branches, each one glowing with its own pattern. Ships of many shapes drifted around it, some smooth and silver, others sharp and angular, others so strange Jace could not even guess which side was the front. Myra let out a low whistle. "So the rumors were small," she said. Elias felt a familiar weight in his chest, not fear but respect. "Welcome to the crossroad," he said. The Wayfarer was guided in by a signal that did not use words or numbers, but something closer to a feeling. The ship's systems responded without protest, aligning and slowing, as if they understood. They docked at a platform that glowed a soft blue. The airlock opened with a quiet hiss, and a different kind of air flowed in. It smelled clean, sharp, and faintly sweet, like rain on metal. Jace stepped out first, then froze. The beings waiting for them were not human. They stood tall and slender, their bodies covered in smooth, glowing patterns instead of skin. Their heads were shaped like narrow crowns, with eyes that shone like small suns. They wore no clothes, only bands of light that shifted around their forms, changing color with their movements. One of them stepped forward. The light around it turned warm gold. Elias Ward, a voice said, not through sound, but directly into the mind. You are late, Elias smiled. You know how humans are, he said. We like to make an entrance. The being's light flickered, a sign of amusement. We sensed your choice before you arrived, it said. The echoes of it reached far. Mara stiffened. Jace looked around, eyes wide, as if expecting the walls to speak too. Elias nodded. I did what I had to, he said. The being inclined its head. Come, the high luminary waits. They followed through halls that curved in impossible ways, floors that felt solid but looked like glass, walls that showed moving images of stars and worlds far away. Jace kept turning in circles, trying to see everything at once. Are those real places? He whispered. Yes, Elias said. Some of them are even friendly. They entered a wide chamber filled with soft white light. At the center stood a figure taller than the others, her glow deeper and more complex, colors shifting through shades Jace did not have names for. This was Cathessa. She did not walk, she seemed to float, her light touching the floor without pressing it. Her eyes focused on Elias, and when she spoke, the room felt warmer. You chose, she said. Elias stepped forward. I did. Cathessa studied him, not with a glance, but with a presence like she was reading the shape of his thoughts. You left safety, she said. You left status. You left the comfort of being known. I left a cage, Elias replied, even if it was a nice one. A ripple of light moved through the chamber. The other beings shifted, their colors changing, a silent reaction. Cathessa moved closer. Your kind is strange, she said. You build walls, then dream of skies. Elias met her gaze. And your kind. We build skies, she said. And wonder why you keep climbing them. Jace held his breath, feeling like he was standing inside a moment too big for him. Cathessa turned her attention to the crew. These follow you, she said to Elias. Not because they must, but because they choose. They know what they're risking, Elias said. Do they? Cathessa asked. Elias looked at Jace, at Mara, at the others waiting near the door. They know enough, he said. Cathessa's light softened. Then they are welcome. The chamber shifted, walls sliding open to reveal a long table made of solid light. Images formed above it, showing stars, trade routes, borders drawn and erased. Your colony is small, Cathessa said, but its position is not. Elias nodded. It sits near 3 major lanes, he said. They just don't know it yet. They will, Cathessa said, now that you have broken their story. Elias leaned forward, hands on the edge of the glowing table. They laughed at me, he said. They thought I was throwing my life away. Cathessa's eyes brightened. You were, she said, the small one to reach the larger one. She gestured, and the images shifted to show massive fleets, symbols of many species, lines connecting systems like a web. This is the conquered, she said. A balance of powers that does not yet include your people. Not yet, Elias said. Cathessa studied him. Your kind is young, she said. Loud, fast, you change things simply by being in them. Elias allowed himself a small smile. We've been told that before. She stepped closer, the light around her deepened, becoming almost solid. The bond we offer is not a contract, she said. It is not a trade, it is a joining. Myra shifted uncomfortably. Jace's eyes went even wider. Elias did not look away. I know, he said. Cathessa extended a hand, or something like a hand, formed of gentle, swirling light. If you walk this path, she said, you will never be just one man again. You will be a bridge. You will be a symbol. You will be a target. Elias thought of the sirens on Westreach Prime. The angry faces, the laughter, the small, tight world he had left behind. I've been a target before, he said. At least this time it means something. Cathessa's light flared, filling the chamber with gold and white. The other beings bowed their heads. Then the path opens, she said. Not only for you, for your people. She lowered her hand. Elias reached out and placed his own against the light. It did not burn. It felt warm, steady, alive. Jace gasped softly. The air in the room seemed to hum, not with sound, but with possibility. Far away on Westreach Prime, Governor Vale stood in his office, staring at reports that did not make sense. Trade signals flickered. Old routes went quiet. New ones appeared on the edges of his maps, just out of reach. He felt for the first time that the world he thought he controlled was much smaller than he believed. Back at the crossroad, Elias withdrew his hand. Cathas's glow settled into a calm, deep light. "It begins," she said. Mara exhaled slowly. "So what happens now?" Cathasa turned to her. "Now," she said, "your captain becomes something more than a captain." Elias looked at the stars beyond the chamber's walls, at the endless dark and endless light beyond it. He did not feel powerful. He felt responsible. The first Aurelian ship appeared in the sky of Westreach Prime at dawn. At first, people thought it was a storm cloud. The morning sun rose behind it, turning its edges gold and red, and for a moment it looked almost beautiful. Then the shape became clear. It was not a cloud, it was too smooth, too still, too large. The colony's early workers stopped in the fields, dock crews froze on the landing pads, children pointed from rooftops. The shape hung high above the planet, silent and heavy, like the sky itself had decided to come closer. Governor Belle was in his office when the alert sounded. The wall screens lit up with warnings, censored data, and frantic messages from the spaceport. "Unidentified object in orbit," one officer said over the channel. "Size, it's bigger than anything we've ever seen." Governor Belle stood slowly. His hands rested on his desk, and for the first time in years they trembled. "Is it a ship?" he asked. There was a pause. "Yes, Governor," the officer said. "And it's not human." More shapes followed, smaller than the first, but still massive. They appeared one by one, sliding into the sky like quiet giants. None of them fired weapons. None of them sent threats. They simply arrived and stayed. The colony's defense grid powered up automatically. Old cannons rotated on their towers. Shields hummed to life around key buildings. But the numbers on the screens told a simple truth. Even if every gun fired at once, it would not be enough. In the main square, where banners from the failed wedding still hung limp and dusty, people gathered again. But this time there was no music, no flowers, only fear. Seraphine Belle stood near the steps of the government hall, her silver dress long gone, replaced by a plain coat. Her hair was tied back, her face pale. She stared up at the sky, at the huge shadow that covered part of the sun. "They came for him," someone whispered nearby. "Or they came because of him," another replied. Seraphine's jaw tightened. She remembered Elias' calm face when he turned away from her. She had thought he was being foolish, proud. Now, looking at the sky, she wondered if he had seen this coming. Governor Belle stepped out onto the platform, flanked by security officers. He raised his hands, trying to calm the crowd, but his voice shook when he spoke. "People of Westreach Prime," he said, "we are facing an unknown situation. Our scanners show multiple alien vessels in orbit. We are attempting communication." A voice from the crowd shouted, "Are we under attack?" "No," the governor said quickly, "not yet." The word "yet" did not help. Up in orbit, the Aurelian fleet waited. At the crossroad, Elias stood in a wide viewing chamber, looking at a projection of Westreach Prime. Cathasa stood beside him, her light steady and calm. "They are afraid," Elias said. "They should be," Cathasa replied. "Fear keeps a mind open." Elias frowned. "Fear also makes people do stupid things." Cathasa tilted her head slightly. "So does pride." "Your colony has much of both." A signal light flashed in the chamber. An Aurelian attendant spoke softly, mind voice echoing through the space. "The colony attempts communication." Cathasa turned to Elias. "This is your moment," she said. "Not as a captain, not as a subject, but as a bridge." Elias took a deep breath. "Open the channel," he said. Back on Westreach Prime, every screen in the colony flickered. The governor's face disappeared, replaced by a simple image. Elias Ward standing in a bright, strange room, stars behind him. The crowd gasped. Some shouted his name, others cursed it. Seraphine felt her chest tighten. He looked the same, calm, steady, but something about him was different, like he was standing on higher ground. "People of Westreach Prime," Elias said. His voice carried clearly across the square through speakers and screens and open windows. "I know you didn't expect to see me like this." A bitter laugh rose from the crowd. Someone shouted, "You brought this on us?" Elias paused, letting the noise fade. "I didn't bring them here to threaten you," he said. "I brought them here to show you what's possible." Governor Belle stepped back into view on a side screen. "Captain Ward," he said sharply, "you left this colony without warning. Now alien fleets appear in our sky. Explain yourself." Elias met the governor's eyes through the screen. "I left because this colony was trying to chain itself to the past," he said. "These ships are the future, or they could be." Cathasa stepped into view beside him. The crowd fell silent. The high luminary's light filled the screens, her form glowing in colors that did not exist on Westreach Prime. "I am Cathessa," she said, her voice entering minds and ears at once. "I speak for the Aurelian conquered." Some people dropped to their knees, others backed away. A few simply stared, mouths open. Cathessa continued. "We have watched your kind for a long time. You move quickly, you fight fiercely, you dream loudly." Elias spoke again. "They see what I see," he said. "A small world with a big place in a bigger map." Governor Vale's face hardened. "And what is it you want from us?" he asked. Cathessa's gaze seemed to rest on him alone. "Not obedience," she said. "Not tribute. A choice." She raised her hand and the screens shifted. Images of trade routes appeared, glowing lines stretching between systems. New paths lit up around Westreach Prime, turning the small colony into a bright node in a wide network. "We offer connection," Cathessa said. "Protection, exchange of knowledge, growth." A merchant in the crowd whispered, "Trade routes," a dock worker murmured. "Jobs," a farmer said softly. "Supplies." Seraphine watched the faces around her change. Fear was still there, but something else was growing beside it. Hope, greed, curiosity. Governor Vale leaned forward. "And the cost?" he asked. Elias answered before Cathessa could. "The cost is letting go of thinking you're alone," he said. "The cost is accepting that you're part of something bigger and acting like it." The governor scoffed. "You expect us to trust an alien empire because you say so?" Elias' eyes narrowed. "I expect you to trust your own survival," he said, "because if you don't choose this, someone else will choose for you." As if on cue, another alert sounded in the governor's office. An officer rushed into view on a side screen. "Governor, unidentified signals on the outer edge of the system," she said. "Different ships, not like the ones in orbit." Cathessa's light darkened slightly. "The car," she said. "They test new borders by burning weak ones." The crowd murmured in fear. Elias felt his jaw tighten. "They were always going to come," he said. "Now they just know where to look." Governor Vale looked up at the sky, at the Aurelian fleet, then at the frightened faces of his people. His world, his careful balance of power, was slipping through his hands. "What happens?" he asked slowly. "If we refuse?" Cathessa did not lie. "Then we leave," she said, "and you stand alone." Silence fell. Even the wind seemed to stop. Seraphine stepped forward without thinking. Her voice rang out clear and strong. "And if we accept?" Cathessa turned to her. "Then you become part of the conquered," she said. "Your world becomes watched, guarded, heard." Seraphine swallowed. She thought of the wedding of the future she had imagined for herself, of power tied to one small world. Then she thought of the sky, full of ships and paths and unknown places. She looked at her father. "We can't fight what's coming alone," she said. Governor Vale stared at her. For a moment he saw not a political piece but his daughter standing in a world far larger than the one he had tried to build for her. He turned back to the screen. "If we agree," he said, "who speaks for us?" Cathessa's eyes shifted to Elias. Elias felt the weight drop onto him like gravity. "Not just me," he said quickly. "I'll be your voice out there, but you'll still choose your own leaders, your own path." Cathessa nodded. "He is a bridge, not a chain," the crowd whispered. Some people shook their heads. Others nodded slowly. A distant rumble rolled through the sky, not thunder, engines. The outer sensors picked up the car ships more clearly now, sharp shapes, fast and aggressive, moving toward the system. Governor Vale closed his eyes for a brief moment. Then he opened them. "Westreach Prime accepts the offer of the Aurelian conquered," he said. The words felt heavy, final. A cheer rose from part of the crowd. Another part stayed silent, stunned. Cathessa's light flared bright. "Then you are not alone," she said. In orbit, the Aurelian fleet moved for the first time. Ships spread out, forming a wide, protective arc around the planet. Lines of light connected them, a shield made not of walls but of presence. On the main screen, Elias exhaled slowly. He felt relief, but also the deep, steady pull of responsibility tightening around him. Seraphine looked up at him through the screen. Their eyes met across space and choice and broken plans. "You always did like big stages," she said quietly. Elias almost smiled. "I never liked small cages," he replied. The car ships slowed at the edge of the system. They lingered, watching the Aurelian formation. Then one by one they turned away, slipping back into the dark. A wave of breath seemed to pass through the colony as people realized they were still alive, still standing. Governor Vale straightened his coat. "Captain Ward," he said, "or whatever you are now, this world will need guidance." Elias nodded. "I'll give it," he said. "Not from above, from beside." The screens faded back to the normal sky view, but nothing felt normal anymore. On the crossroad, Cathessa turned to Elias. "You have changed their story," she said. Elias looked at the stars, at the endless paths opening in his mind. "They changed it themselves," he said. "I just showed them the page." Far below on Westreach Prime, people began to talk about the future in new ways, about ships that would come, about worlds they might see, about a hero who had refused a wedding and brought back the sky instead. The day after the Aurelian fleet formed its shining arc above Westreach Prime, the colony woke up like a person who had survived a fall. Everything was still there, the dust, the wind, the cracked roads, but the sky felt different. It was not empty anymore, it was watched. People looked up often. Some did it with relief, some did it with anger. A few did it with a quiet kind of awe, the way a child looks at something too big to understand. Governor Belle called emergency meetings from sunrise to night. His office lights never went dark. On the public screens he spoke with a strong voice, promising stability, promising that the colony would keep its independence, promising that no one had sold Westreach Prime to anyone. He sounded confident. But every time he finished talking, he touched the edge of his desk like he needed to feel something solid. Seraphine moved through the government halls like a ghost that refused to disappear. Some people looked at her with pity. Others looked at her with suspicion, as if she had been part of a plan and failed. She kept her chin up and her shoulders straight. She listened more than she spoke. 2 days after the agreement, the first Aurelian envoy arrived on the ground. It did not walk with guards. It did not demand attention. It simply came down in a slender ship and stepped onto the main landing pad with the same quiet confidence the fleet had shown in orbit. The envoy's light-patterned body reflected the sun, and its voice entered minds gently, like a calm hand on a shoulder. It spoke to the governor, to the port authority, to the supply coordinators. It asked simple questions. How many people lived here? What did they grow? What did they mine? What did they need? And slowly the colony began to breathe again. Shipments followed quickly. Medical packs, water filters, replacement parts for the aging defense grid, even fresh soil treatments for the farms. Nothing was free, not truly, but the trades were fair. For the first time in years, Westreach Prime felt like it was connected to a wider world instead of clawing at the edge of survival. That should have been enough to calm everyone. But fear does not disappear just because food arrives. Sometimes it grows stronger because it cannot hide behind hunger anymore. A week after the fleet arrived, the first act of sabotage happened. It started small. A relay tower on the northern ridge went silent. Engineers drove out to repair it and found the casing melted from the inside, like someone had poured heat through its heart. The damage was clean, precise, and wrong. 2 days later, a shipment of water filters failed inspection. The seals had been cut and resealed with cheap glue. If they had been installed, they would have leaked contaminant back into the drinking system. Then a fuel depot at the port exploded in the middle of the night. The blast was not huge, but it was loud enough to rattle windows across town. People ran into the streets, coughing from smoke, staring at the orange light rising behind the hangars. Security vehicles screamed down the roads. Fire crews worked until dawn. No one died. That fact was the only reason the colony did not break into panic right then, but by morning, rumors had already formed like mold. The Aurelians did it, some said. They want to scare us into obedience. The governor did it, others claimed. So he can ask for more protection and look like a savior. A third group whispered something worse. Elias did it. He's proving he can shake us whenever he wants. Governor Belle held another public speech and promised investigations. He doubled security patrols. He ordered checkpoints on the roads. The colony's mood tightened. People started watching neighbors. Old grudges returned with new strength. The Aurelian envoy asked to assist. Governor Belle politely refused. "We can handle our own problems," he said, smiling for the cameras. Privately, he was terrified that if the Aurelians solved the problem faster than he could, his authority would become a decorative thing, like a badge with no power behind it. On the crossroad, Cathessa watched the reports in silence. The images and numbers floated above a table of light. Elias stood beside her, arms folded, face hard. "This is not random," Elias said. "No," Cathessa agreed. "It is a message." Elias' eyes narrowed. "From the car." Cathessa's glow shifted darker around the edges. "They do not always attack with ships," she said. "They prefer to rot a place from the inside if they can." Elias thought of Westreach Prime's tight politics, its fragile pride. They picked the perfect target, he said, a world that's already split. Cathessa turned slightly toward him. Then you must go, she said. Elias did not answer right away. He had left that planet with a clean cut. Returning meant stepping back into the story he had broken. It meant facing Seraphine again, facing the governor. Facing a crowd that still did not know whether to hate him or worship him. Mara appeared in the doorway as if she had been listening from the hall. If you don't go, she said, you're letting them define the narrative. Elias exhaled slowly. Fine, he said, I'll go. Cathessa's eyes brightened. Not as a conqueror, she warned, not as a ruler. As a bridge, Elias said. He glanced at Mara. Bring the Wayfarer and bring proof. When the Wayfarer descended onto Westreach Prime's main pad, the whole port froze. Workers stopped loading crates. Security officers raised rifles, then hesitated, unsure whether they were aiming at a threat or a symbol. A crowd formed quickly behind the fences. People shouted, people cheered, people cursed. Cameras lifted, drones buzzed overhead. Elias stepped down the ramp with Mara at his side and 2 Aurelian attendants behind them, their light patterns muted to avoid startling people. The air tasted like home and dust and unfinished arguments. Governor Vale arrived with an armed escort. His face was tight, but he forced a smile. Captain Ward, he said loudly, as if naming Elias as captain would shrink him back down, you return at a dramatic time. Elias looked at the armed escort. I noticed. The governor's smile cracked a little. We didn't request your presence. You didn't have to, Elias said. Someone is trying to burn your house down. I lived in it too. Governor Vale's eyes flicked to the Aurelian attendants. And you brought guests. They're not here to take over, Elias said. They're here to help me catch the people who are trying to make you beg. That word hit like a slap. Beg. Governor Vale hated it because he could imagine it. Seraphine appeared behind her father, stepping out of a government vehicle. She did not smile. She did not glare. She simply watched Elias with a steady face that made it hard to read what she felt. Elias met her eyes for a moment. Something unspoken passed between them, old plans, broken promises, and a future that had jumped onto a different track. Then he looked away. There was work to do. He asked for access to the fuel depot site, the relay tower remains, and the failed water filters. Governor Vale agreed, but only after setting rules. Local security would supervise. Local technicians would be present. Elias could advise, but he would not command operations on the ground. Elias let him talk. Fine, he said. Supervise all you want, just don't slow me down. The first stop was the fuel depot ruins. Blackened ground spread like a scar. Burnt metal twisted upward. Workers had already cleared most debris, but Elias crouched near a cracked pipe and ran a scanner over it. Mara watched his readings. Heat cut, she murmured. Not an accidental leak. One of the local investigators, a broad-shouldered man named Rook, frowned. So someone planted charges. Not charges, Elias said. Look at the residue. The scanner displayed a thin chemical signature that didn't match colony explosives. Elias tilted the screen so Rook could see. Rook's face tightened. That's not from here. No, Elias said. But I've seen it before. He moved quickly from site to site, gathering small pieces of proof like stones for a bridge. At the relay tower, he found a tiny coil of alien filament melted into the inner casing, designed to burn systems clean without leaving obvious tracks. At the water filters, he found microcuts made by a tool that used vibration rather than blades. Rook watched him work with growing unease. You're saying aliens did this, he said. Elias stood and brushed dust off his knees. I'm saying the car did this, he corrected. And they want you to blame the Aurelians. Rook swallowed. Why? Because if you turn on your allies, Elias said, you'll be alone again, and then the car can help you for a price. That night, another sabotage attempt happened right under the colony's nose. A hacker slipped into the defense grid control room at the East Tower. The plan was simple. Shut down the grid for 10 minutes, long enough for panic to explode and for someone to send a desperate message into deep space. A message the car would answer, but Elias was waiting. He had predicted it. Saboteurs always tried to hit the thing that made people feel safe. Elias and Mara stood in the shadowed hallway outside the control room, listening to footsteps and soft electronic clicks through the door. 2 local officers waited with them, tense and sweating. Mara whispered, "You sure it's tonight?" Elias nodded. "They're escalating. They need a big moment." The door handle moved slowly. Someone inside was trying to leave without being seen. Elias shifted his weight, ready. The door opened a crack. A figure slipped out, small, quick, wearing a maintenance jacket and a cap pulled low. The person froze when they saw Elias. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then the figure ran. Elias caught them in 3 steps. He didn't hit them. He hooked an arm around their shoulders, turned them, and pinned their wrists gently but firmly against the wall. The cap fell off, revealing a young man with frightened eyes and a jaw clenched so hard it shook. One of the local officers hissed, "That's Tomas from comms." Tomas struggled, then stopped when he realized it was useless. His chest heaved. "You don't understand," he whispered. Elias leaned closer. "Then explain," he said. Tomas's eyes darted. They said the Aurelians are a trap," he stammered. "They said we'd lose everything, that we'd be swallowed up." "Who said?" Mara asked. Tomas swallowed. "A traitor," he said. "Off-world, paid in real credits, said he had contacts, said he could get us protection without becoming a pet." Elias' voice went colder. "Name." Tomas shook his head fast. "I don't know his real name." Rook stepped forward, face hard. "What did he look like?" Tomas hesitated, then spoke. "Tall, pale, human, I think, but his eyes were wrong, too still." Elias exchanged a glance with Mara. "Car agent wearing a human mask," Mara muttered. Tomas's voice broke. "I didn't want anyone hurt," he said. "I just wanted us to stay ours." Elias' grip loosened slightly, but his eyes stayed sharp. "Staying yours doesn't mean staying alone," he said. "It means choosing your future instead of letting fear choose it for you." Tomas started to cry, silent and ashamed. The local officers took him away. By morning, the colony was split again, but now the split had a clear line. Those who wanted to hold the old world, even if it was breaking, and those who wanted to step into the larger one, even if it was terrifying. Governor Belle called another public gathering in the main square. This time, he invited Elias to stand beside him. Elias almost refused, but Cathas's earlier words echoed in his mind. Bridge, not chain. The crowd was bigger than before, angrier, more afraid. People held signs, some welcoming the Aurelians, some demanding they leave, some accusing the governor of betrayal. The air felt like a stretched cable ready to snap. Governor Belle spoke first, voice loud and official. He announced that sabotage attempts had been discovered and stopped. He promised arrests. He promised security. He promised that the colony would not be ruled by any outside power. Then he stepped back and, with visible reluctance, gave Elias the floor. Elias looked out at the faces, miners, farmers, dock workers, merchants, teachers, people who had built something hard in a hard place. People who feared losing it. He spoke in simple words because fancy words sounded like lies on the frontier. "You're scared," he said. "I get it. You've been alone out here for a long time. Alone makes you proud. Alone makes you tough. Alone also makes you a target." A shout rose. "We were fine before you," Elias nodded once. "You were surviving," he said. "That's not the same as living." Another voice yelled, "You married an alien, you sold us." Elias didn't flinch. "I didn't sell you," he said. "I didn't buy you either. I offered you a door." He pointed up at the sky, where the Aurelian ships were faint, bright marks even in daylight. "They didn't come to take your names, your homes, your work," he said. "They came because the galaxy is changing. And the car are coming whether you like it or not." Murmurs ran through the crowd. People shifted. Fear moved again, but now it had a shape. Elias continued. "Here's the truth," he said. "You can choose to be part of something bigger with allies who will stand with you. Or you can choose to be alone and hope the next storm misses you." He paused, letting the words sink in. "And if you think joining an alliance means becoming weak," he said, voice firmer now, "you don't understand humans." That line caught people. Some lifted their heads. Some clenched fists. Pride, the useful kind, sparked. "Humans don't stop being human because we shake someone's hand," Elias said. "We don't lose our spine because we accept help. We build, we adapt, we learn faster than anyone expects. And when someone tries to break us from the inside, we don't hide, we face it." Governor Belle watched, face unreadable. Seraphine stood near the steps, arms folded, eyes fixed on Elias like she was seeing him clearly for the first time. Elias raised his voice slightly, not shouting, just strong. "This is the loyalty test," he said. "Not loyalty to me, not loyalty to the Aurelians, loyalty to the future you want your kids to have." Silence settled, heavy but not hostile. Then a dock worker near the front spoke, voice rough. "What do we have to do?" Elias nodded toward the government hall behind him. "Hold your leaders accountable," he said. "Share information. Stop letting fear turn neighbors into enemies." And when someone whispers that you should burn your own home to keep it pure, you tell them no. A slow ripple of agreement moved through the crowd. Not everyone, but enough. That evening, security teams found the off-world traitor Tomas had mentioned. He tried to flee through a service tunnel near the outer warehouses. He almost made it. Almost. Mara caught him with a stun net. When the net tightened, the man's skin shimmered, just for a second, like a mask slipping. Underneath was something pale and sharp-eyed, not fully human. Not fully anything the colony knew. The car agent didn't fight much once he was captured. He only smiled, thin and smug, and said one calm sentence. "You've taken your first step," he told Elias. "Now you will learn what it costs." Elias stared at him and answered with the same calm. "We've been paying costs our whole history," he said. "We're still here." When the agent was taken away, the colony finally understood the simplest truth. The sabotage wasn't proof that the alliance was dangerous. It was proof that it mattered. The morning of the ceremony did not feel like a celebration at first. It felt like the quiet before a long journey. Westreach Prime woke under a sky filled with gentle light. The Aurelian ships still formed their wide arc above the planet, but now their glow was softer, less like a shield and more like a watchful presence. People stepped outside their homes and looked up without fear. Some even waved, half joking, half hopeful. In the main square, workers moved with purpose. The old banners from the failed wedding had been taken down. In their place, new cloths were raised, simple and clean, painted with symbols from many worlds. Circles, stars, lines that crossed and met in the middle. Not the mark of one family or one colony, but of connection. Elias stood at the edge of the square, watching it come together. He wore a plain, dark uniform, no medals, no bright colors. He had refused anything that made him look like a ruler. Today was not about rank. It was about choice. Mara stood beside him, arms crossed, scanning the crowd out of habit more than fear. "You look calm," she said. "I'm not," Elias replied. "But I've learned the difference between being calm and being ready," she smirked. "That's a very human sentence." Elias almost laughed. Across the square, Seraphine Vale watched from the steps of the government hall. She wore a simple blue coat, nothing like the silver dress she had once planned to wear. Her father stood near her, older somehow, like the past few weeks had added years to his shoulders. Governor Vale cleared his throat. "You don't have to be here," he said quietly to his daughter. "This isn't your burden." Seraphine shook her head. "It is my world," she said. "That makes it my burden, too." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "You've grown," he said. She looked out at the crowd. "So have you," she replied. The square filled slowly. Humans stood shoulder to shoulder with off-world visitors, Marn traders. Aurelian envoys glowing softly in shifting colors. Even a few travelers from distant systems who had heard the story of the small colony that had become a crossroad. The air hummed with many languages, many voices, many futures brushing against each other. At the center of the square, a platform of smooth stone and light had been built overnight. It was simple. No throne, no grand arch, just a place to stand and be seen. Cathessa arrived without sound. One moment the space beside the platform was empty. The next she was there, her glow warm and steady, her presence filling the space without pushing anyone out. The crowd fell quiet. Elias stepped forward. The path opened for him, not because of guards, but because people moved aside on their own. Some nodded, some stared. Some still looked unsure, but no one blocked his way. He climbed onto the platform and stood across from Cathessa. She studied him with that deep, patient gaze. "You have done well," she said. "I've done what I could," Elias replied. "That is all any world can do," she said. An Aurelian attendant stepped forward and projected a soft image into the air above the platform. It showed stars, worlds, lines of light connecting them. The conquered, the web of alliance that stretched across space. Cathessa raised her voice, and it carried across the square and into minds. "Today is not the joining of two beings alone," she said. "It is the joining of paths." She gestured to the image. "Your world stood at the edge of this web, now it steps inside." A murmur of sound rippled through the crowd. Not fear, not celebration, something deeper. A shared understanding that a door had opened and would never fully close again. Elias spoke next. He did not use big words. He did not try to sound like a leader. "When I left this place," he said, "you laughed. Some of you were angry, some of you were hurt. I don't blame you." He paused, looking at faces he recognized. Dock workers, farmers, teachers. Children perched on shoulders. "I didn't leave because I thought I was better than this world," he said. I left because I believed this world could be better than it was allowed to be. He pointed gently toward the sky. Out there is a universe that doesn't care about our pride or our comfort. It only cares about what we choose when things get hard. The crowd stayed silent, listening. I chose to step forward instead of standing still, Elias said, not because it was easy, because it was honest. He turned slightly toward Cathessa. And I chose to walk this path with someone who believes in what humans can become, not just what we are right now. Cathessa's light deepened, warm and bright. Seraphine watched from the steps, her chest tight. She thought of the life she had planned, the future she had tried to control. She realized slowly that Elias had not rejected her. He had rejected the small world both of them had been taught to accept. She did not feel angry anymore. She felt free. The Aurelian attendant spoke the words of the joining. They were simple, translated into human speech and many other forms at once. Do you, Elias ward of earth and its scattered worlds, choose to walk as a bridge between your kind and the conquered, to carry trust where fear would grow, to stand where paths meet and storms may follow? Elias answered without hesitation. I do. Do you, Cathessa of the Aurelian light, choose to walk beside this human to share your people's strength and knowledge, to meet change not as a wall but as an open hand? I do, Cathessa said, and her voice carried like a sunrise. They stepped closer. Elias raised his hand. Cathessa lowered hers, light forming into a shape that matched his. When they touched, the air shimmered. The image above the platform changed. The web of stars brightened. One new line flared into existence, linking Westreach Prime to the wider network. The crowd gasped as a wave of soft light rolled outward from the platform, not blinding, not burning, just warm. It passed over people like a gentle wind, leaving behind a feeling that was hard to name. Hope, maybe. Pride, definitely. Far above, the Aurelian fleet responded. Ships shifted in slow, graceful patterns, forming a symbol that could be seen even from the ground. A circle crossed by a line, the mark of the conquered. Cheers broke out, not wild, not frantic, but steady and strong. People clapped, some cried. Some simply stood and stared at the sky, mouths open in quiet wonder. Governor Vale found himself clapping too, though he hadn't meant to. He stopped, embarrassed, then started again. The future was not his to control anymore. It was his to help shape. After the ceremony, the square did not empty. People stayed. Humans and aliens spoke in small groups, awkward and curious. Children approached Aurelian envoys without fear, asking questions that made the glowing beings tilt their heads in amused surprise. Mara leaned against a railing, watching it all. You did it, she said to Elias as he joined her. We did it, Elias corrected. She nodded. Fair. Seraphine approached slowly, hands in her coat pockets. Elias saw her coming and felt a familiar tension, but it was softer now, like an old wound that had healed into a scar. She stopped a few steps away. So, she said, you married the sky. Elias smiled just a little. Something like that. She studied him. You were never meant to stay here, were you? He thought about it. I was meant to come from here, he said. That's not the same thing, Seraphine exhaled. I spent my whole life trying to make this place big enough to hold me, she said. I didn't realize I could just grow beyond it. You still can, Elias said. She looked around at the mix of worlds in the square. Maybe I will, she replied. As the sun dipped lower, Cathessa stood at the edge of the platform, watching Westreach Prime with a thoughtful glow. Your people are loud, she said to Elias as he joined her, and stubborn and brave in strange ways. Elias chuckled. That's the nice version. She tilted her head. They will change the conquered, she said. Good, Elias replied. It could use some noise. That night, lights filled the square. Not just human lamps, but Aurelian light patterns, Marn glow spheres, and devices from worlds that had never touched Westreach Prime before. Music played, strange and familiar at the same time. Food was shared across species with mixed success and much laughter. Stories were told about the past, about the future, about a captain who had said no to a wedding and yes to a universe. Far above, the stars burned quietly, unchanged and yet in some small way different. On the edge of the crowd, a young boy tugged on his mother's sleeve and pointed at the sky. Mom, he asked, can we go up there someday? She followed his finger, then looked down at his hopeful face. Maybe, she said, if you want to, the boy grinned. Elias watched that moment from a distance, heart heavy and light at the same time. He had not conquered anything. He had not claimed a throne or a title. He had opened a door. And as the people of Westreach Prime walked through it, some boldly, some carefully, some with a backward glance, he knew this was the part of being human that the galaxy would never forget. Not their strength, not their ships, but their choice to stand, again and again, at the edge of the unknown and say, in simple, stubborn words,